Brandon Tatum joins us today. I suspect you have already run into him on Instagram or TikTok. I don't know how the algorithm knew that I would like his stuff, but I found it very amusing. He is a former Tucson police officer, media personality. He co-founded Blexit, authored Beaten Black and Blue, Being a Black Cop in an American Under Siege, hosted nationally syndicated The Officer Tatum Show and podcast, former All-American high school football player, also played at the University of Arizona, featured in the U.S. Army All-American game. During his 6-year term at Tucson PD, he served as a SWAT operator, field training officer, and public information officer. You can find him on X, The Officer Tatum, yes, that's it, Tatum. So I look forward to speaking to him. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. We're going to get into the vice presidential sort of pick by Kamala Harris and a number of other topics. So I'll be watching you on the Restream. We'll be right with him after this. Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. And welcome back. We are going to get into it with Brandon Tatum. You can follow him on tatumplus.com or officertatum.com. and on X, The Officer Tatum. The book is Beaten Black and Blue, Being a Black Cop in an America Under Siege. He's also host of The Officer Tatum Show and podcast. Please welcome Brandon Tatum. Brandon, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Dr. Drew.
Pleasure to be here. As I said, I found your stuff, and I mostly found it kind of ironically insightful and amusing, and I just kind of kept following. I thought, this is insightful because you sort of have a point of view, and your point of view isn't everyone's point of view, and real kinds of truths come barreling forward. When did you discover that you had something to offer in social media?
Well, I think it had to have been in around 2015 when I made my first video ever. I wasn't on social media whatsoever, didn't know anything about social media when it comes to producing content. And I just so happened to go to a Trump rally, and I gave my honest opinion about what I saw, and the first video I put out there went viral, and it ended up being shared by Donald Trump and a few other people. It was all over the news. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, maybe there's some value to some of these opinions that I have that I've always had. I just have never expressed it in the way of social media.
Did you get any pushback at first?
Oh, it was insane amount of pushback. People at my church, people, almost everybody I went to school with, probably 80% of people that I knew and grew up with had something negative to say about me being a Trump supporter. And I'm a traitor to my own people. And now I'm with the Republican racist white people, bootlicking and all kind of stuff that they were saying. And it's been good over the years. It's obviously the tables have turned. many of those people have come back to me and say, you know what, B, I actually agree with you. And then obviously I've gotten a lot of people that have supported me. And so it kind of washes out some of the negative stuff at the beginning.
We're going to watch that video in a second, but a friend of mine did similar videos to what you report in your original viral video. The guy's name is Ami Horowitz. I think he's been on this show. And he did a video where he went to, this was in 2016. He went to the Democratic National Convention and wore a bunch of Trump gear and flew a Trump flag outside the convention. Then he did the same thing at the Republican National Convention, but he wore a bunch of Hillary gear and had some sort of placard for Hillary. And the video documented exactly what you were talking about. At the Republican convention, he had a lot of people patting him on the back saying, dude, you're in the wrong place, come on now, and making jokes and making fun of him. At the Democratic National Convention, they became threatening and violent immediately, quickly. And that's essentially what you were saying. So, Caleb, maybe we should play that original video.
What's going on Facebook? It's B. Tatum. I'm making this video to give you guys some insight on my experience at a Donald Trump rally. There was somebody wearing a Ku Klux Klan hat saying F Donald Trump, flipping people off. The group that I posted were yelling F Donald Trump in front of these kids. You had families down there. I seen this one lady covering her daughter's ears because these people are just outlandish and out of control. And I'm a police officer, and I have been through a lot of dramatic situations. And I have to be honest, I felt very uncomfortable there. I mean, there was a lot of police officers there or whatever, but I felt uncomfortable. I felt like at any moment with the climate of these protesters, this wasn't the people that was involved in Trump's rally. It was these protesters that at any moment I could get sucker punched by somebody because they're just outrageously screaming and yelling and not really saying anything but hateful slurs.
So there we are. And I don't think things have changed very much, but what are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, it was crazy. It was mind blowing to me. I had never been to anything like that, right? I'd never been to a campaign rally. And the funny thing is that Hillary Clinton had a campaign, I think the day before, her and Bernie Sanders, and nobody showed up and nobody cared. And Donald Trump goes and I say, well, let me check out the candidate I'm interested in. I didn't have any Trump gear on or anything. I'm just walking through the venue. And they were out in the front screaming, cussing. They were burning incense. They were trying to attack people. They were trying to block the front door. One of them called me a white supremacist. And it was just insane. And I go into the venue and all the Trump supporters are nice. Everybody's cool. Everybody's hanging out. We're having a good time. It's like going to a concert. And these people were just popping up in the audience every now and again throughout, it was all planned out, and they're screaming and cussing and F Donald Trump. And I'll never forget this lady was covering her kids' ears in front of these people that had a Black Lives Matter flag, and they were screaming and cussing and yelling, and they were so vicious. And, I can handle my own. If it got, messy in there, I could take care of business. But it was still that fear of like, I don't know how unpredictable these people are, and I'm just at a rally for a presidential candidate. And these people have never changed. I don't know if it's the spirit of some of these people or just the angst or zealousness against Donald Trump has been something from the very beginning. I don't know what drives these people, but they've been crazy and lunatics all the way back from 2015.
Do you have any theory about what that is? Because I worry about that too. And one of my theories is the press has induced through propaganda and persuasion an absolute hysteria through, it's a Russian operative and there's now a Russian agent in the White House and all this stuff that we heard for 4 years and no one has apologized for or walked back.
Right. And people are kind of silly. I'm trying to use a nice word on your show. People are silly. The average person in America, like people like you and I and the people that are listening to us are the exception. The average person is so gullible. And they see a white man and they just push a little bit of propaganda here and there. And now everybody forgot who Donald Trump was for the last 50 years. And now he's a devil, he's racist. I mean, the very people that he helped out, the very people he supported are turning on him because somebody said something on television. So I think the media has a huge responsibility in this. I mean, they have covered him negatively, even lied on him at 98% of the time. And they have never walked these things back, even after being fact checked, even after the threat of lawsuits. They just edit it out on their content, go back and revise history, but they never come out and say, you know what, Trump never had anything to do with Russia. Donald Trump, there's no evidence that he was saying that when he said that good people on both sides, that he was talking about white supremacists. They came on television and said he's never denounced David Duke. I mean, he denounced David Duke for the last 20 years. There's a highlight tape of him denouncing white supremacy. And they just don't care. And the average person don't care enough to research. They just believe it at face value, and they find virtue in hating Donald Trump. And you know, and you and I both probably agree with this concept, and I don't know if it's scientifically proven but people suffer from what I believe is Trump derangement syndrome. Like there's some type of chemical imbalance in the brain for some of these people that just the thought of Donald Trump makes them want to jump off a building or something.
Yeah. So I actually interviewed a couple of psychologists who wrote a book called The Trump Derangement Syndrome. He's a psychometric, so he's a quant guy, and she's a clinical psychologist, and they've isolated essentially down to narcissism and childhood trauma and that kind of stuff. Is where what they found the highest correlation with was something called external locus of control, which is a sense that everything out there happens to me and I have no control over it, and nothing I'm doing internally has anything to do with that. So you could see where that would be the case. It's so funny that term has now become so widespread, but I think you're right. I just call it a delusion when it was happening. I call it hysteria now. But back to your construct of them just pushing a button and a hysteria ensues. They did the same thing in the other direction for Kamala Harris, didn't they?
You're saying to make her look positive. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me. And I lose hope, I lose faith in humanity when I think about this. Kamala Harris was the trashiest candidate on planet Earth when she tried to run for president, didn't get any delegates, and she didn't make it to the final debate. Nobody wanted her. She was trash. And then she gets selected as the vice president because of the color of her skin, allegedly, and also her gender, her sexual organs. They decided to have her be vice president, and she was terrible. I think she was the worst rated polled vice president in United States history. She has nothing that she's done. There's no evidence of her doing anything positive as the vice president. She talks in circles and word salads every time she opens her mouth. I mean, I honestly believe that they actually have Democrats that are a lot smarter than her, that are probably more qualified, that could probably be more competitive. Kamala Harris is the worst candidate they could have ever picked. And she is actually the worst representation of a black woman out of any genre in United States history, in my personal opinion. But the media, all they have to do is reconfigure this idea that she's a new candidate. She's never been a senator. She's never been VP. She's never been a prosecutor. She just came from La La Land, and she's now this new candidate that has this hope and a dream for America. The things that she said on the campaign trail is so ridiculous to me. When I'm president, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Ma'am, you are vice president today. You are in the administration that's running the country today. So somehow you mysteriously get elected and you now have power to do something for the country. It's insane to me.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if you can hear my wife Susan laughing in the background, but it's. I've never seen quite so much glee and delight coming out of the producer's booth here. So it's so funny. And now we've got Walz on. You pronounce his name Walz or Walsh? I did not know this guy, but I'd heard talk of what the Minnesota government was doing during the riots and stuff. But let me read to you. Somebody did something on X today, and I emailed it to myself. And then I thought, oh, this would be perfect for you. How does he pronounce his name, by the way? Do we all know? Is it Walsh? Is it Waltz?
It's
Waltz.
Waltz.
Waltz, like a dance.
Waltz.
Okay. So, okay. Here's I'm going to have you react to each of these three. I'm going to try not to bias this. March 2020, he started out as a reasonable Democratic governor, thoughtful COVID restrictions. Over the next 2 years, he devolved into a weird, folksy dictator, imposing more and more and more unconstitutional rules, blaming the people of Minnesota, whenever COVID rates went up. Thoughts about that?
Well, I think that seems pretty accurate. I didn't follow the guy for a very long time. I mean, I have nothing to do with Minnesota politics.
Good. So it seems accurate. Seems accurate to me too. So he went from, okay, I'm a reasonable person, to I'm a totalitarian, in panic, delusional, one of those guys. All right. Number two, his response to the George Floyd murder. He never spoke to the police. He kept expecting. People kept expecting him to get out on the streets or meet with protesters, but nothing. Instead, he hid inside his mansion and let's see. And he just failed to respond. I don't know how many days that was, but I remember that when the riots were going on, they kept saying, where's the governor? Why isn't he doing something, saying something? And he said nothing. So so let me read you the third thing too. He was continually presided over egregious cases of fraud involving donors and supporters. If you look up Feeding Our Future, you'll see what I mean. Largest COVID fraud in the nation. And then he also, in terms of his COVID hysteria, he had that crazy report line, where you can report people, the Hitler Youth line, let's call it. So there's his sort of record. To me, when I read it, I think he's probably a reasonable, in terms of his own personal philosophy, but as a politician, he does whatever's expedient, and when there's leadership necessary, he hides. It's sort of disgusting. If he were just a reasonable Democrat, which he, I guess, was at one point, and just asserted that, I'd be like, okay. But he blows in the wind, it seems like, and becomes hysterical in both directions. He's hysterical COVID sort of lockdown guy, totalitarian guy, and he's hysterical hiding in the mansion when there's work to be done as a leader. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I like I said, some of the things have come out of his past, even his stolen valor, that's been proven that when he was, tapped to go to war, he somehow found the time for him to retire. Now, I know he was in the military for 20 plus years, but hey, man, you serve in the military that long, and now it's time for you to go to a combat zone. You can't leave your boys behind. And he tapped out of the, of the force, but he still uses his credentials that never were realized because he retired. So he never had the staff sergeant or whatever that title that he had. He never was actually in that title. So it's not shocking that when the rubber hits the road and the conflict happens, that he's a quitter. He's a person who runs and hides. Now, I don't think that he probably ever was a normal person. I think that he probably ran as a normal candidate to get elected, like some of these Democrats do. Joe Biden did the same thing. Kamala Harris isn't hiding her. Well, she is kind of. You see him walking back to America thing. They got lapels with the American flag on it now and all this other stuff. They're trying to reimagine being a patriotic administration. But I think he probably was always a radical. I mean, the stuff that he's doing now, these gun grabbing, I don't want to say anything because I'm trying to be a good Christian. I'm going to use good words. These people are just crazy. And I would hope that the American people would make a true assessment and say, let me look at Donald Trump's record, criticize him, do whatever you need to do an investigation. Let me look at Kamala Harris's record, criticize her, do the exact same evaluation of both of these candidates. It seems as if they believe everything negative about Trump and then they think everything positive about Kamala Harris because they're now have a little bit of a honeymoon presentation. But it's gonna die down soon as she have to start answering some real questions.
I don't know. I think your good Christian heart maybe should be unleashed on this show. You can use some real language if you want. I'm happy to hear it. You played football. You're a cop. I get it. I play football too. I understand locker room talk. I'm good with it. But I wanted to ask about the book before we take a little break. What made you write the book? What's in the book? Let's get people to read the book.
Yeah, so I wrote the book. It actually had I wouldn't say an epiphany, but I felt like God put it on my heart to write this book when I was a cop before I ever had social media, anything. And I had the title in my mind. So I'm gonna write a book about, beating black and blue, getting beat up on one side because I'm a black man in the police force by my own people. And then getting beat up from just being a cop in general, wearing the badge, wearing the uniform. Barack Obama was hating police officers. People were attacking us just because we had a uniform on. And I felt that there was a unique angle of like, I'm taking shots from people that are in my community. And also I'm taking shots because I'm a cop. That dynamic I wanted to put in the book. And then when my social media started blowing up and I became popular and people wanted to hear what I had to say, I decided to write a book with a little bit of my background. So kind of where I came from, how I got to the point of being a police officer, my football career, all of that. And then in the book, I interviewed 5 other police officers, some of which are really close friends of mine. One was he was the reason why I became a police officer. I did a ride along with Officer Sean Payne. And so I wanted to give a presentation of how officers are viewing some of these things that are going on in the country, the backlash. And then I went through some of the shootings too, because I thought that was important. A lot of people misconstrue some of the shootings, whether they're justified or not, according to the law. And so I wanted to cover some of those things too. George Floyd was one of the incidents that I covered as well, and give him a fair and balanced perspective. So it's a very short book. I'm not a big reader, so I can't read a 300-page book, and I wouldn't write one. So I wrote a quick book so people can digest it, read it real quick, get the information that they want to get, and look forward to the next one.
All right, so support Brandon, the Officer Tatum on X, get the book. And I want to get into this a little bit with you because I approach these topics with great humility, which is you refer to your community. I would love to get your thoughts on what you think is going on. I don't want you to get into any trouble, but I have a patient who is a very elderly woman who I've known for 50 years. And she has helped me approach this topic as a older white male with great humility, because she's enlightened me to some stuff. I was like, geez, that was going on in this community and I didn't even know it. And that is, not only is it disgusting, but the fact that I didn't know it or didn't realize it or wasn't aware of it, that's also disgusting. So I approach this with great humility. I do believe there is a kind of a Eurocentrism that many of us fall victim to, because I'm an immigrant too, right? And I come from all the trauma of Western Europe and the bullshit that went on in Russia. And so we have our own trauma that we carry forward. But clearly there is something special about what this country did to, which is your community the right way to, I just absolute humility in approaching the topic. So you tell me what is up and what your perceptions are of things.
Yeah, let me define community. You know, for the sake of conversation and argument, when I'm referring to people that share the same melanin, I call it my community. In reality, my community is the people that I'm around, the people that I love, black, white, indifferent. I don't care who you are. If you're a good person, you're part of my community, especially the people who are Christians. You know, we all family. But for the sake of argument, when I'm talking about people of the melanin, is what I say on my show, I call it my community. I think that there is a trauma that is passed down from slavery unnecessarily. And I think that's why we see some of these racial tensions still spurring in our country. My grandmother's, I guess I wouldn't say existence, but my grandmother's reality when she was in her 30s is very different than my reality, right? My grandmother told me stories of how she had to drink out of a separate water fountain than white people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even believe that existed unless I saw videos, because my reality when I were, kind of in the era I grew up in, that seems impossible to exist. And so I think that what happened was there is real issues and real trauma that have occurred in this country. But for whatever reason, black people somehow cling to it, politicians endorse it, and we hold on to that trauma too long. I should not be upset with white people about something that happened 100 plus years ago. I shouldn't be upset with white people about stuff that happened 60, 70 years ago. I wasn't even alive. We've gotten past that point. But I think some people are still living in the past. And I'll tell you this, black people do a terrible job at conveying empathy for white people in this country as well. And I'm not saying all black people, I'm saying the ones who are giving grief to white folks, because black people gaslight a lot. I grew up in a black neighborhood. I know what the truth is. After experiencing moving away from the neighborhood I grew up in, going to college and becoming an entrepreneur and meeting a whole bunch of other people around the world, I realized that I had been looking at the existence of being black through these racist lenses, to where I see racism in places where racism don't really exist. I see a conflict. I used to see a conflict in America where the conflict really wasn't that black and white. And I think that people hold on to that and they try to pass that on to white people so that they can feel sorry for black folks. In this country, racism is a dying sport. I have never experienced true racism overtly. Somebody in their mind probably like, I don't like that N-word. I mean, I have no idea. I can't read minds and I don't care. But you talk about overt racism, it's very rare. A lot of times people, what they're experiencing is prejudice, or they're experiencing somebody that just don't like them. And I remember when being a cop, people get all bent out of shape when a cop is acting a certain way towards minorities. My experience in law enforcement is that same trashy cop acts that way with everybody. And that same trashy cop acts that way with other cops. And we all hate that person. And if you're living through these lenses of racism, you see it as a white cop, he's just doing this to me because I'm black. And it's like, more than likely, he's just a dirtbag and everybody hates him anyway.
I want to keep this conversation going a little bit, and I've taken a quick break, but the just to bring home the drinking fountain thing, my mother got in trouble with law enforcement as a child for drinking out of the wrong drinking fountain in the South. She also got arrested. You know how close this all is. This was all in the 40s and 50s. She got arrested for, it was something like not requiring a black man, and this is in Atlanta or something, to step off the sidewalk when she was walking down the street. And she was like, no, get up here. And she got arrested. You got put in jail. The white person got put in jail for not, this was the Jim Crow bullshit. But the other thing is, I mean, this is the point. I'll bring it back in a second. But also here in Pasadena, California, the birthplace of Jackie Robinson. In the 40s, Jackie Robinson couldn't go into the public swimming pool here. And I think it went all the way into the 50s. It's disgusting. It's just, and we all share in the disgusting condemnation. Now, let's use the word your community had to freaking live with that. I get it. And that is a intolerable injustice. But what worries me is that a lot of the trauma is actually not slavery, but what came next, which was Reconstruction in the South and Jim Crow, and that stuff was horrible. Frederick Douglass himself said we gave up the lash for the shotgun. It was worse for a while. And so I want to talk to you about that a little bit, and how this trauma, if we don't talk about really what the traumas are, how can people heal? You know what I mean? Because they're multi-layered, they're multi-generational, they're tremendous, and they're going to require some acknowledgement to really get through it. It seems to me, humbly, as somebody that's worked with trauma. But Brandon, hold on one second. I got to take a little break. Brandon Tatum was with us. Brandon Trauma. I do also want to go back to VP candidate Walz and his Hitler Youth line, where you report people in your neighborhood. We've got a recording of what that line sounded like. We got a lot to get into still. Stay with us. Follow the Officer Tatum on X. Be right back. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue. And we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew.
You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
And before we get back to our guests, we heard some great news from Paleo Valley, the audience, and of course, Susan calling out viewers as well. They've been ordering up lots of bone broth and protein sticks because they're great. If you haven't joined the Paleo Valley family of fans, I suspect you'll find out why we love this company so much. The products are delicious. They're carefully sourced. The bone broth comes in plain vanilla, chocolate. We love the chocolate, put in our coffee every day. Protein sticks and venison, beef, chicken, and pork are addictive and low-calorie, packed with nutrients. You can take them anywhere, and be also all the above. Superior in quality, helps us maintain a healthy diet. As I said, low in calorie, high in nutrients. The bone broth made with actual bones, not hides. Great source of collagen. The meat sticks made from grass-fed and finished beef or pasture-raised chicken and pork, and they taste great. So get yours today at drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order, or subscribe to save 20% so you never run out. That is drdrew.com/Paleo Valley, PALEOVALLEY. Brandon Tatum, you can follow him on X at the Officer Tatum, also officertatum.com and tatumplus.com. Before we go back into you probably have thoughts about what I was talking about, but I want to cleanse our palate a little bit first and talk about the Kamala Harris vice presidential candidate, because it's preoccupying me. I heard this what do you call it? This reporting line, this snitch line, it's being called, I guess. And we actually have a recording of the governor's snitch line. Those of you that say it didn't exist,
Hello,
oh no, it existed.
Reached the Department of Public Safety stay-at-home hotline. The information you leave is considered public information. At the tone, please leave the following information: your name, your callback number, how the stay-at-home order is being violated, and where the stay-at-home order was violated. Thank you.
Record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or press pound for more options.
Just that, should be placed in every history book and every documentary about the COVID, and it should scare the shit out of everyone.
I agree 1,000%. You know how crazy that was back in the COVID days?
Yes, I do.
They would literally have, I mean, of course, you know better than anybody else, but that they would literally have a snitch line. It's like, well, what other thing have they ever done this with? You know, when you look at it, Dr. Drew, and you probably know this better than anybody else, the leading cause of death for people in this country is heart disease and other ailments that are closely related to the heart and related to a person's diet. diabetes and some of these other things that are causing people to die way more frequently than COVID-19. They will shut down your whole life and make you lose your business and make you want to jump off a building, but they won't shut down a McDonald's. They won't put restrictions on these companies putting in the seed oils in the food. They won't do any of those things that cause the most death. They will never go to Chicago, Illinois, in the inner city communities and end gun violence in the city. They won't even attempt. They don't care. They won't report it. So they don't care really about your life. They don't care about the longevity of your life, the quality of your life. But they wanted to, control people with this fake stuff they were doing. And I wish that people didn't have, selective memory or whatever they call it, where you lose your memory. I wish they wouldn't have people, I wish people wouldn't act that way, because if they continue down this path, we're going to get tricked again. And they're going to end up having us put masks on our face and not flying and shutting our businesses down. It's troubling to me. And this guy, Tim Walz, is a proponent of that. And if they were in office and in power, let something like this happen again, they will be Nazis against us.
Yes.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
It seems to me that the First Amendment specifically protects that. The speech you hate the most is the speech you must protect.
And who's the arbiter of hate speech, right?
Or misinformation.
You don't like what I say, or you don't want me to disseminate information that may be troubling to your campaign. Oh, now my speech is not protected. I mean, this is a slippery slope, and they're already talking about taking guns. I mean, they're threatening the First and Second Amendment right away, and they're not even hiding it anymore. They're not disguising it. They're coming right out and saying, we're going to take your guns. We're going to ban assault rifles, or whatever they call them, which they're not assault rifles, but this is what they're claiming. And you got people in droves signing up to, hey, I want to vote for those people. It's insane to me.
Yeah, I don't understand the lack of insight around speech. That to me is such an easy one. You should protect free speech at all cost. It's the one thing that really protects everything else. And if we allow that to be eroded, it's so obviously dangerous. And why we aren't unified as a country on that one is so difficult for me to get my head around, other than something you had talked about earlier, which is pushing the button on propaganda, that they get swept into this sort of frenzy where they really aren't thinking about it. And I think that happens. I think certainly about 70% of people just kind of want to put their head down and get on with their life. But those people, if they're not careful, get swept into the propaganda machines.
1,000%. I mean, I hope people understand that. A lot of these news outlets are not news anymore. They're literally advertisers. They're getting you hooked on fear and telling you what you want to hear or what they think you want to hear, getting you all, hating this person or whatever so they can sell you advertisement. That's pretty much what they're doing.
Yeah,
They're not objectively reporting anything. They literally would get on TV and tell a flat lie about Donald Trump. They just tell a flat out lie, and they know it's a lie. They fact check it and they know it's a lie. It's already in the media as a lie. We saw it with Joe Biden during the debate. He said that he brought up that same thing that Trump said it was good people on both sides. That's been debunked, 5 years ago. And he still pushed the lie, and the media never covered that he lied. They only said Donald Trump lied in the debate. No, Joe Biden lied way more times than they claimed that Donald Trump did. So I just wish people would wake up and start really doing research. Back to your point with the whole experience of blacks in America. A lot of people don't do enough historical research because not all black people experienced Jim Crow. Jim Crow was mostly in the South. There was a lot of successful black people during the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. I mean, Madam C.J. Walker, Sarah Bree Love, was the first female millionaire out of any woman of any race in the United States of America. The first legal slave owner in American history was a black man, Anthony Johnson. People can look it up. Anthony Johnson was the first legal slave owner. He had 2 indentured servants. He took them to court, sued, and he ended up winning, and they had to serve him for the rest of their lives. There was hundreds of black people that owned slaves during slavery. So, and then, right after slavery, there was so many black businesses. Black Wall Street, which people tout all the time in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was a financial district that was like no other. You can go to Harlem. You can go all around the country. Black people were flourishing. You know, you can go down the list of all the Black inventors. I could go there. I can talk about them to there's no end. Black people were doing tremendous in this country in certain facets. When we ran into these Democrats and their damaging policies, is when Black people start to see the pendulum swing in a negative direction. But we cannot sit and act as if Black people were just, every Black person was just, you know, under the thumb of the white man. People don't know this as well, Dr. Drew. Rosa Parks had a car. Her husband had a car. And people don't know that. It was a stage activist or move by Rosa Parks and the whole movement from Martin Luther King. And so they kind of staged that to drive the point home. But she wasn't some downtrodden woman that couldn't get around with transportation. She had to use the white man's transportation. Black people had a bus system as well as the white people. So all of these things occurred, and if we don't know our history and we're just told that Black people are victims our whole life, we can't put these things in proper perspective and move forward.
Yeah, that is my point. That it needs to be explored, talked about honestly, and debated. Have you read Booker T. Washington's biography?
I haven't read it, but I heard it was a tremendous book.
He's another incredible story and of African American, you know, survival and success and brilliance. But he and heart, by the way, that's a word that I think most of non-Black communities don't understand, that issue that I think the Black community's heart. You know what I'm talking about? There's a gigantic element of heart that I've become aware of, and no one ever talks about. And when I bring it up to my Black friends, they know exactly what I mean, and I want to know more because tell me.
And the Democrats, they a lot of times they manipulate that. Like you know, I grew up in Texas. I grew up in the South. I know people. My people came from struggling. You know, my great grandfather lived on a farm. I mean, they had to. You know, they didn't have a lot. And Black people have this tremendous ability when unleashed to the world and not held and bound by chains mentally. They have this ability to turn, you know, water to wine, for lack of better terms. They can really turn something from nothing. And you can look at it, like you say, Booker T. Washington, came from slavery. He was born into slavery, started the Tuskegee Institute. He was an incredibly successful man. He helped and mentored so many Black leaders that dominated financially across the United States of America. I mean, even look at Black people today. We just went from slavery to Jim Crow, and look at all the entrepreneurial excellence that Black people have.
But let me. I want to put a little finer point on it, because financial success and business success is a piece of it. But I mean, think about Booker T. Washington. He sacrificed himself the whole way. That's heart. You know what I mean? That was not just motivation. That was something bigger than motivation. That was coming from his soul, from his heart. I don't know what else to call it. And he, you know, oh my God, he would go and set up the one building after another. He scratched his way into the Tuskegee Institute to help other people. But the other thing his biography taught me that I didn't really realize is the fact that American indigenous people also owned slaves. And they were not, and they had huge disdain for African Americans. Do you know why? And Booker T. Washington pointed this out. I thought it was very interesting. He said, because listen, I choke on it when I say it, but this is just the history. Because the Indians, the indigenous people said you should have died before getting caught. That was their position. So if you got caught, that's on you. You should have just died in wherever you were getting rounded up. And as though they had insight into what was happening in the continent of Africa or West Africa. I mean, God, I still want to understand that history because I don't. What the hell was going on there? But that's not my business. But let's get back to the trauma, because we're running a little short on time, and I know I have a kind of hard out today, which is that you know the preoccupation that everyone has with the word lynching, right? Which, and I'm not saying it's not justified. I'm saying, of course, yes, of course, there's a preoccupation. But lynching did not exist really until restoration, until the South was restored. when slavery was ended, what happened next was worse in a lot of ways. There were massacres and there were lynchings. And if you lynched a slave, the slave owner would lynch you because that was his property. You didn't do that. But afterwards, it was on. And I don't think people understand that part. What do they do? The Southern, not Reformation or Restoration. Is a different word. I used it in a few minutes ago. Anyway, we know the rebuilding of the South after the Civil War was an absolute freaking catastrophe. Read Ulysses S. Grant's biography. You'll read all about what he tried to save everyone from and how bad it went. It was horrible. And because no one studies history, we don't even parse out where the traumas were and what the traumas are that people had to live under.
Right. You're 100% correct. I took Africana Studies in college as my, in my minor. I wanted to minor in it, but I needed a couple classes, so I did a thematic minor. But, when you learn about it, you say, the black slaves were property. So to a certain degree, they had to keep them alive. They had to make sure that they were at least decently fed and housed. Some slave owners weren't as bad as others. Some used to beat their slaves and rape them. And there was others that took care of them like they were family. And so there's a dynamic there. But once they were released from slavery.
And wait, let's say it so nobody accuses either one of us of anything. We are not saying slavery is okay or good. It was horrific, horrible. We get it. You do not. Chattel slavery is a whole fucked up thing. Got it.
You got to be mentally ill.
But we're talking about the study of history. The study of history.
A person has to be mentally ill to think that we would suggest that slavery was not a terrible thing.
Right.
It's just that.
But how crazy everything is. People are delusional right now. They are. They're hysterical.
And there's levels to it. I want people to know that there's levels to it, right? Everybody wasn't slaves on the plantation. You had house slaves. You had people who were, drivers and different ways like that. Even Harriet Tubman, she was married to a man who was a free black man, and she lived with him when she started the Underground Railroad. Many people don't know that. And she had a job. So there's nuance to this stuff that people should understand. But when slaves were released, it was worse because now they weren't really property. Terrible. And people they can't use them, so they will kill them. And a lot of the slaves rather stay on the plantation and work and try to earn a living than to go out into the wild world where they were just vulnerable. So the trauma did occur, but I think that it's up to us now to try to not pass on unduly trauma and to put in perspective that black people weren't the only ones that went through traumatic experiences. You had white people who migrated here that had nothing to do with slavery.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So my family escaped the Holodomor in Ukraine, which was a famine and pogroms and massacres and all the same stuff. But we got here. My grandparents got here and my father got here, and this country treated them differently. Now, what's different about our story is not the trauma's the same, right? It's these governments and these people acting out on marginalized people. But the unique thing about the African American story, is amongst other things, is that it was this country that perpetrated it. So how do we reconcile that?
Right. I think that we have to understand that we grew from that, right? I mean, we can't, this is the biggest thing I think as a Christian, we have to have a level of forgiveness, right? These people did black people wrong back in the day, amongst others, right? I mean, like you said, the Choctaw Indian was actually the last to release the slaves. It wasn't in Galveston, Texas with white folks. It was actually the Choctaw Indian a year later. So Juneteenth is a complete farce, is the way they present it today. But anyway, we have to understand that negative things happen and we should forgive the people who did our ancestors wrong and move on and treat people the way we want to be treated today, because many people have no awareness with this stuff, right? I mean, I'll go to Starbucks and go to these places and get me a little coffee. Nobody cares that I'm black. And I couldn't care less that they're white. Are you going to take my money or not? And I'll tell you this, America has gotten to the point now where it's even less likely that your race will matter at all. If you got a good work ethic, you add value, you're a good person, you know how to network, you're presentable, you can be anything you want to be in America. And we should teach our young people how to be strategically smart in presentation, in managing finances, and investing and doing other things. So therefore, they're not caught up in, well, they don't like me because I'm black. Well, your resume sucks and you don't know how to interview because you never put in the work. How about you do those things first before you jump into the racism category? I would argue this. White people have helped me more than black people have ever helped me in my life when it comes to people outside of my family. So to think that this country is just this racist place is crazy to me. If you're a good person, you got good ideas, there's people of all races that will help you get to the top and not shame you.
No, I agree. And so when I was growing up, we seemed to be heading that direction. Now we weren't perfect, and I thought that's the world I was growing into. But then all of a sudden, I think as much for anything, for people's political expediency, they made a huge issue out of it because they got power if you made an issue of it. But they're not wrong. The people, as President Obama said, there are people that feel this way. Okay, got it. But where do we go wrong? Like, why can't people hear your message that you just delivered, for instance, on one hand, and the other, what are the solutions? So where are we going wrong? Because to me, it feels like education is where we go wrong. And if we just started there and supporting healthy families, if we did that, we'd have a start, we'd have a foothold. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think that us moving away from God to the extent that we have has been where I think this country has gone wrong. Because we have somehow found that our worth and our value is in our victimhood instead of in our victory. And a lot of people are still living in bondage. They feel like they have nowhere to go. And I feel like when you have Christ, then you have an outlet, you have somewhere to go, you have a purpose, you have something to look forward to. It's not about your parents or your past or whatever disadvantages that you had in life. You can look at it as these disadvantages or these adversities is what's going to make me better than everybody else if I put my foot down and work hard. So I think that people forgetting about God and relying on self is how we just fall off the wagon. And our political climate in America needs to change. I mean, this two-party system thing is just not working. They're literally invested in running every year and trying to find something to create so they can act like they want to serve you. These people want there to be hatred and division. Because if there's no hatred and division, the people will learn that we don't need you. You work for us. We don't work for you guys. You better compete for our vote. We don't have to vote for you. We have candidates that really value what the people want. But if they got us divided, they can trick us into hating each other while behind the scenes they're doing the dirty work. So America has a little bit to go. The solution, in my opinion, is one God, but also for us to be, as individuals in the space that we have been provided, the influence that we have, is to treat people with respect and kindness, treat people the way you want to be treated, and add the value you want to see in this country. That's why I became a cop, because I said, you know what? I want to be the cop that I want to see out on the streets. I want to be respectful to people. I want to be the person that handles justice and arrest the bad guys and hug the babies that you save. So I'm going to be that guy. I never even said a cuss word when I was a cop. I never cursed on duty, not one time. On SWAT, nothing. Because I wanted to always be a representation for Christ, even in the job that I did, even as crazy as it was, because believe it or not, it actually brought peace to people when you would give them a command, but you didn't cuss them out and say, I'm gonna shoot you in the effing face. You know, it actually had a better outcome. And so I think that's the solution. We as individuals have to focus on our home, our circle of influence first, and then we go out and be activists. Too often people want to be activists and change the world, and their house is falling apart.
Yeah.
So I think that's the solution
to narcissism.
Right.
Yeah, change the world is narcissism. Let's be fair. The one thing you said, though, about they work for us, I'm very concerned about this sort of middle level of bureaucrats who are ensconced in the federal governments, particularly, and the state governments to some extent, that believe that they run the government and these elected officials are just people that kind of move through office and we don't have to worry about them. But we actually run the government. That's disgusting. They are serving our will. The Constitution has to be really systematically restored to the position it was intended, where the elected officials serve the people and the bureaucrats serve the elected officials to support the will of the people, period. And you don't run the government as a bureaucrat. But so how do we, and I love the fact, I've said this before for a few years now, that we just need to bring the golden rule back. But how do we get the golden rule to be followed? And how do we get people sort of back towards another, essentially you're describing a great awakening, that people sort of get back in a spiritual life of some type. I don't see them moving in that direction, or are they quietly?
It's two sides to it, right? I think the way you get to it is by being an example yourself. Nobody wants to follow what you're doing if you're a naggy, evil person and you're bitter all the time. If you don't have no joy, why do people want to follow what you're doing? So I think people need to be an example of what they want to see first, because you don't have to say much. Your actions speak louder than your words. If you're kind and you're generous, people begin to look at you and say, what is it about this guy that he's so, passionate and kind and generous, and he loves people and he's genuine? What is it about him? And then people will hear your message. But also the Bible says that the end time is coming. And there's going to be a great falling away from people. Good is going to be evil, and evil is going to be good. So there's a part of this that's inevitable, that we're going to see people just lose their minds in the last days before Jesus come back. So I do think we have a chance to do something here before that happens. I do think we have a chance to kind of manage and make better what God has given us the responsibility for, which is our country and obviously our people that follow us and stuff like that. So I see it both ways. I think we need to be the example in our actions. And then we also need to understand that some of this stuff is out of our control. We are not going to be able to change everybody. I look at influence as planting seeds. You plant the seeds and water them, and eventually they'll grow. You're not going to be able to change everybody. Some of these people are nutty, and they're going to die nutty. And you can't waste too many brain cells trying to convince these people.
So let's kind of wrap up with you telling me what's on your mind now. What are you creating content about and around? What are you thinking about?
Well, I'm just trying to save America. So, I want people to wake
just
up
that?
to the...
Just small things like that, just a little thing. Like, I'm just going to say...
Just a little thing like saving the world.
If you can do it, I will worship you forever, sir. If you can even come close to it.
But look, I'm gonna give my best. While I got breath in my body, I'm gonna give my best effort. I had a prayer with God a long time ago.
Let me ask this. Let me ask this, because I think I actually love that you say that. But that's a massive task for me. I've noticed that if you can focus on a couple of things. So for me, I'm focused on speech. Like, people need the freedom of speech, and period. And I'll listen to everybody that's got opinions, and I'm ready to hear them. And I may not like it, but fine. So that's me. Where do you fall in terms of what you're going to do to save America? What are the small things, or is it just the content and the social stuff? What are you going to do?
Truth. It's just providing truth. Breaking down the nuances, because people don't have time to do this like I do. I do this all day long. So I'm looking at the articles, I'm reading stuff, and I'm following the campaigns and doing different things like that to bring the truth to the people. So authenticity and truth is what I'm focused on. And that's why, like, when I review police shootings, I don't do it because I just feel like doing it. I do it because I think that the media is betraying people and they don't know the truth, so they can't accurately move forward with a conscious thought in a certain direction. So I guess if I had to bring it down to a central focal point, it's literally, and it sounds very simplistic, but it's literally, I'm trying to help people navigate through the bull crap to get to the truth.
Yeah. No, you do it. I had not thought of your stuff as that, but when I think about what you've provided me as one of your viewers and followers, yeah, you give us the truth, and I'm going to add to that in a digestible way. You're funny, you're amusing, you're clear, and so that is coming through. The truth is coming through, and I think you ought to be more explicit about that as I think about it, because you should be branding yourself as a truth teller, because that's what you're doing. That it is, in fact, but I didn't see it. I didn't think about it until you make it explicit, and that's kind of very powerful. And you've got a point of view, having an experience as a cop and stuff, and I love that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm just taking everything that I've been through, all the things that I've learned, good, bad, and indifferent, to try to, focus that into doing what God has called me to do in the future. And I think it goes back even to the slavery thing. It's like, man, you know what? My ancestors went through that. I should make things better. I should be an example of the things that they didn't have an opportunity to do, not wallow in the fact that they had that happen to them, but celebrate the fact that they gave me an opportunity to be in the greatest country on planet Earth, to have the freedoms that I have. And I'm going to take that torch that they passed along all the way from slavery, from the boat in Africa to slavery, through Jim Crow, through Civil Rights Act, and I'm gonna take the torch and take the thing to the moon. And that's what we should all be doing, is saying that the adversities that we face isn't a bad thing. We have to be built, and we have to learn grit. We have to learn strategy. We have to learn how to be savvy. We have to get a little heart. We have to have some skin in the game. All of those things are necessary to be successful moving forward.
Brandon, you're absolutely right. That we have taken for granted the fact that so many of us in this country have come from circumstances where our freedoms have been profoundly restricted, or our ancestors have been abused, and we should be celebrating that they survived, and we are here to bear the fruit of the freedom that we've been granted by this country. You're absolutely right. We need to. That must be your spiritual program, because it shifts into a more positive light just about everything that's going on right now, because you can celebrate even the opportunity to struggle against some of the BS that's out there.
Yeah, and I'm blessed, right? Social media has done me well, and it's funny that you become a popular person and you become, a person that people look up to just because you're telling the truth. There's something about just telling the truth. And I've learned a long time ago, even when I was a kid, my mama used to say that I say whatever I want to say. She gave me that ability to be myself. And I do it now. And it's such a nuance, not nuance, but it's such a finite talent that I think that a lot of people are afraid to divulge. Just be honest. Who cares if these people don't like you? Some people are not going to like you, then they'll love you later. Who cares? Your focus should be being authentically yourself and being honest with people and telling the truth. And I lost some people at first, and now I have 7 million people that follow me, and I can't go anywhere without people recognizing me. So it comes down to that, and I hope that everybody gets that message of saying, look, man, be bold, be courageous. It's no greater time than this. If you were living in communist China, being bold is not that easy. In America, this is the easiest time ever for you to be bold. You have social media, you actually have the freedom of speech, and they're trying to get at it, but we have the freedom of speech, you have the Constitution, you have lawyers that will defend you. This is the time where when you look back at history and your grandkids look back at you, you can say, I did my part, I put in the work, I stood up for what was right. Instead of them looking back at you and saying, why were you a coward, so afraid to stand up when you were in the easiest time to ever exist, to have the freedom to say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do, create whatever organization and nonprofit and social media. I hope people don't have their grandchildren look back at them and be shamed that they were cowards in such a easy opportunity to do the right thing.
So I was just checking my social media to make sure I'm following you all over the place. So it turns out I was following you on Instagram. That's where I picked you up. So that is also at the Officer Tatum, much like the X, which you see on the screen. The Officer Tatum is the same thing on TikTok.
Yep, every platform, the Officer Tatum, even on YouTube. YouTube is my biggest platform.
Okay, and I've noticed, I have not checked this, but I think that your Instagram videos are either very similar or identical to your TikTok videos, and TikTok is sending me your videos. Are they different?
No, they're kind of different because of the time. You have to cut the time down for certain social media. But generically, they're the same. And we do that so we can get on every social media platform, because there's some people that follow me just on TikTok, which is interesting. They see me in the streets like, I follow you on TikTok. And TikTok is my least favorite. I hope that TikTok don't hear me, but they are the most censored platform, and I want to quit every day. I want to tell my team, we are not posting on there ever again. It's a waste of time. But there's people to save, and if we can help 1 or 2 people who could probably change the world if they can get the right perspective, then we're going to keep putting in the work as long as we can.
Caleb, is that true that TikTok is the one? I thought YouTube was the one that had the most.
Oh, TikTok is the worst. YouTube has been great. YouTube has been great to me.
Yeah. TikTok is generally worse. However, it was just because we had the Chinese dissident on there, so I'm sure that your TikTok has some sort of a flag on it. YouTube is the worst to us though, because it's so prominent in the United States and they were shutting down medical experts and doctors and things during the pandemic. I think we're still flagged from that. They haven't quite fixed their algorithm yet.
We need to do something about that, it seems to me. I want to be with Brandon.
I mean, they're going to be afraid soon. Like it's very soon.
Brandon.
All of these places. Very soon they're going to have to change, especially with that Musk lawsuit. All these other companies that were censoring people, the tables are about to turn on them. They shouldn't have done that, because if you silence all of these people on one side, the power changes 4 years later, then you're going to have to silence the other side or deal with the bad things you did. It's coming.
We got to stop.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Dr. Drew, you were heroic in what you did, standing the way you did, because the reason I survived on YouTube, because I didn't get into that on YouTube, right? I wanted to. I tried to do it on platforms that wouldn't completely ban me. And the strategy that I had is that I have to kind of sacrifice a few things to reach more people. And hopefully when they open up and they start getting sued and we work this thing out and I can say whatever I want, now I can talk to 3 million people instead of, cutting myself down at 400,000 when I first started.
I get it. Listen,
we all work together.
Prudence, being prudential, being cautious so you can get more. I'm all cool with that. My problem was I was deeply concerned about the medical part, and so I had to speak up. I had no choice. It's just what I had to do. Yeah. And as I said at the time, I felt like I was the French underground, sort of just broadcasting a source of information that people couldn't get elsewhere. And I was noticing on the Restream, people are accusing me of supporting lockdowns and supporting pharma. Neither, however, I did, I made mistakes. And one of my mistakes was when when Governor Newsom said he was locking down, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing that. But okay, I'm going to be a good citizen. I suppose he's preparing for the worst case. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll support the governor. I did that for about 4 months. Then I was like, what the hell are we doing here? What are we doing? What is the plan? 2 years later, I was freaking out.
Well, Dr. Phil, people that say that stuff, they were doing it too. They just talking and trying to sound cute. I had a guy get mad at me.
Actually, Brandon, the reason I bring it up is I'm always looking for opportunities to apologize for where I got things wrong. I want to be, you say you want to be a model. I want to be a model. If I got something wrong, I want to apologize, take full responsibility. And yes, I got by being a good citizen, I did the wrong thing. I should have been continuing to fight against it. I did eventually stand up and adopt my original policy. Which was, this is ridiculous. It's not going to do anything. You're not going to help anything. You're going to harm a lot of people, which is what they did.
Right. And I'm with you 1,000%. I thought they were doing the right thing. Trump was in office. I didn't know Dr. Fauci and them. I thought that they were acting in good faith. And the 2 weeks to slow the spread. And I was listening to Alex Jones, and Alex Jones was saying from the very beginning that once they start 2 weeks, they're going to keep us locked down forever. And they ended up doing it. But I participated in it for the first 2 weeks. I thought that they were doing what's right. And the thing is, Dr. Phil, at first I said, well, I don't want to be the idiot that end up spreading this and hurting other people. Let me just kind of figure this out, because maybe it's something that I don't know.
Wrong. Maybe I'm
wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't believe every conspiracy.
Yeah.
So, but then after a while,
that's prudential. That's being prudent. That's using prudence to make a decision. Okay, I'm on a hard out here. I've got to run, but it has been a privilege. Where are you? Can you talk about that? I'd love to shake your hand one day.
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
One day I hope to come shake your hand. If you're up in Los Angeles, New York City, you let me know, and love to have coffee or just shake your hand.
Yes, likewise.
All right. Thank you, sir. Brandon Tatum, everybody. And the Officer Tatum on social media. I've got to run because Caleb has some childcare demands that he's got to get to.
I got to see my babies.
That is a priority, and we will keep it that way. So thank you all. We will be here. Let's put the schedule up. Scott Adams on Monday. We're going to be out here on Monday this coming week, because we have a little bit of I'm having a little minor surgery on Thursday. Jonathan Turley should be really interesting. He has a new book on the First Amendment. Ivor Cummings, early show on the Wednesday. Peter McCullough coming in the following week. Tony Schaefer. Kelly Victor is going to sit in for me with Dr. Johnson, Senator Johnson, rather. I think she's by herself on that one. Is that true, Caleb, or am I on that one also?
I'm not exactly, not 100% sure. It might just be her on that one.
Sorry, let me just look, because I think it might be both of us. Yeah, I think it might be both of us, but we'll check it out. So Salty Cracker come for a command performance around my birthday time, just as a birthday present to me. We will see you all on Monday. I believe that, let me make sure, is that show not at 3 o'clock Pacific time, our usual time? Let's double check. That is at 3 o'clock Pacific time. I will see you then on Monday. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.